Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch. Welcome to this summer series, Ben, and welcome to 2020.
2020, new decade, mate.
If only the listeners knew that streamer that you've had has served us now for hundreds and hundreds of episodes.
Only you knew that I have 5 of them.
Oh, mate,
That's a backup.
You just stuffed my story. Hey, welcome to the new year.
I know, big year.
2019 was good. 2020 is going to be even better for everyone.
I agree. I think the economy will start to turn.
Yes.
The wheels, they'll be going a bit. And we've got a big year, our 5th year coming in.
We are going to celebrate our 5th birthday on the Property Couch, Ben, but we've had some big years, Ben.
We have.
But this is the best year yet coming up, which is really, really exciting. You back, Stiggy? Back for 2020?
Stiggy's back!
Stiggy! For those playing along at home, she just nodded. She didn't say anything, she just nodded. But
she's... Yes, and back as a new lady.
Ben.
Are we allowed to talk about?
Well, she might. Have we got permission?
Well, I don't know. Iris, have we got permission?
No, but it could.
She's not married.
She's off the market.
Off the market. She is taken. Happily married.
Congratulations, Iris and Terence.
And Terence.
He's a lucky fella, isn't he?
Yes, well, yes, very true.
What a little fun fact about this summer series, Ben, is without exception, everyone who's come on has said, "Oh, hi Ben, hi Bryce, nice to meet you, but where's the Stig? Where do I get to meet the Stig?" And we're like, "All right, fair enough."
We get the message. Come on, got to meet the Stig, and they were happy to meet her than us two, which is fair enough.
Fair enough too. I want to meet the Stig too.
In the corner. Yep, that's true.
Suitably described, Ben. We are a couple of footy-loving buffheads. Hey, today's guest is exciting. We got a lot out of this, but this particular guest came with a little surprise.
A surprise, a couple of gifts.
We'll get that right at the beginning of the interview. But Money Smart's devotee, very, very committed family man. You'll see, very detail-oriented very, very shortly. But this guy and his family are well and truly on the path to financial transformation. So let's have a little listen to their story as we cut to the interview that we did with David List. First of all, welcome to the Property Couch, David.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, this is kind of unusual for us, isn't it, Ben? Because the preparation that we've had for this chat with David is almost unprecedented. And for those folks playing at home, we have a 31-page summary of David's financial situation, right down to the fact that he did have a boat and sold it. Who his mentors are, who his professional services are, and
gets better, Bryce. The facts.
Yes.
Ready for the facts? Forecast, assets, cash flow, and team.
With security bringing it home.
The facts.
So, Dave, I've got to ask the question, and for the benefit of the listeners, there's a lot of time, thought, and energy that's gone into this. So clearly, you are a graphic designer, an actuary, someone who loves putting together. Where did the inspiration for this come from?
So before we begin, I'm just speaking to Ivis. I had some gifts that I wanted to give you both.
Okay, right. So Ivis, you didn't sounds like an Ivis thing to do.
So I brought in some gifts. I made them specially for you.
Right. Okay.
These are handmade.
And so for those again, sort of following along at home, we've got a backpack. Yeah. Hopefully it's all good. We didn't go through security.
And the way that I was sort of laughed,
they have been checked.
I reckon there's a stitch up coming.
So I've been listening to you for late 2017. So how long would that be?
That's a couple of years.
Years coming up to a couple of years.
So I feel like I know you better than you probably know yourself.
Right,
so
very good.
This is for Ivis. Now,
okay, let's
this is for your. They are some. Earmuffs that you might get from Bunny.
Noise cancelling.
Exactly.
Here we go.
Right.
So this is a footy blocker.
Okay.
So when you guys are talking about footy, Ivis can just slip these on.
Yep. Okay. It's even got footy blocker written on the side.
Yeah, and they are and they've got the sharing on there.
There'll be a lot of listeners.
Oh, that's cool.
You like that?
That's a lot of that too.
Like that.
And then, so they are IVA for you.
So
I think there'd be thousands of our listeners who would want those for the footy bands.
Well, not only would they want them for Ibis, they'd want them for themselves. That's what I mean. They got for a fast forward button. Yep.
So you don't do the footy. Who's your team?
I don't like to talk about it, but it's Carlton.
Carlton?
Yeah, that's right.
The Carlton or Freo. Here I go again.
Tragic. I've been watching the basketball. That's probably.
Oh, there we go. So now you got right.
So these are for Bryce, and these are called Bryce eyes.
Okay.
Bryce eyes.
So you can actually slip them on.
All right.
And
so I just might need to take a photo of this so we can put it up on socials.
So that is actually for when Ben's doing his Did You Know? And you can pretend you're actually paying attention.
There we go.
Very good. I like that.
This is good.
Ben, you wear about how many hats?
A few hats. Yep.
And I'm
ridiculous.
and you slip those hats on and off about 100 times.
Yeah.
So I just got you one hat. And these are all the things that you have. And especially
there we go. Oh, Gandhi.
Gee, there's a lot of good into that.
All right, so the business, the podcast, the dad, Sir Benkies, or Mahatma Gandhi, for those who play along as a film.
Hang on a second.
Picker, and then Pipper. That's pretty cool.
So you can just slip that on and just wear that the whole time.
Hey! Well, thank you for
thanks for being a gift.
No worries.
I feel that we need to rewind back to the early part of the year about reciprocity, Ben, because I feel bad that we didn't provide a gift for David.
Well, we'll have to give a couple of books. Yes. so you can gift them on. There we go.
Absolutely, yeah.
Half a dozen books to pass out to your community.
You look fantastic.
Well, that was very enjoyable for us. I'm interested to see if that was enjoyable for the folks listening at home who weren't actually able to visualise that. But Ibis is very, very excited.
Well, we've got a bit of it on film, so we'll have to wait and see what comes out in the socials.
I apologise for interrupting.
No, that's good.
That's all right. It's 350 other episodes of Ben, so it's like it feels right at home.
Very good.
So back to the question: what inspired you to? What inspired you to go to this level of detail in terms of pulling together the summary in a Word document of what's going on for you?
So I had in late 2017, in October, I had settled on my first investment property. And I was thinking, where is there any support for me regarding my investment property? I mean, surely there's a podcast out there, and lo and behold, there was yours, the Property Couch. So as I started listening, not only was there the property piece, but also the money piece, and I quickly realised that I had really no understanding of my own financial position and where I sat, all my assets and all that sort of stuff. So
even can we go back just a fraction further? So what got you into even buying your first property?
Well, so if we go back to the start, my father had always been interested in property.
Yep.
As a kid, he actually shifted us around. He's a carpenter, so he would go and add value to properties and shift us around
into those properties.
So that he got the tax break from his principal place of residence as he moved. But
no tax break. No one should ever tax the principal home. I don't want to entertain the idea that we should ever be charged tax on our principal home.
So it turns out that whilst it might be good economically, it doesn't really work for the family. So the parents split up when I was 7, and then my father still had an interest in property, and he continued to do that. So it had always been on the radar, but it was more about how to make money, but not about how to manage it. So, and I'm going to be careful because I know he'll be listening to this. So he always knew that there was a way to make money through property, but now he realises that particular way in flipping properties isn't the right way to go about it. So he said if he could turn back the clock, he would probably doing the buy and hold strategy.
Retain a few of those on the journey.
And subsequently would be going down a different journey, different path. So
it's a good strategy to upgrade your home, right? Because you get that, as Ben said, it's not a tax concession, but there's a way that you can do that in a tax-effective environment, but it doesn't allow you to accumulate and get the benefit of having multiple properties that are growing over time. So I think to say that it didn't work is probably, depending on the agenda, it might have worked for your dad really in terms of if you're continuing to get a better house every time you moved up, that's a win. But it's the goose that laid the golden egg, right? So the more that you can hold on to, the more you get, 5% growth on one asset, but what about 5% growth on two assets or 5% growth on three assets? All of a sudden, the exponential growth that they get is much better. So it's probably just a reflection point. I'd be interested to have a chat to your dad as to, whether or not he felt he was successful with what he was trying to do at the time.
And also people who are applying it to getting up to their dream home, right? We can't all buy our dream home the first time around, right? So I think it is an excellent strategy for people who just get into the property market, and if they can add value to the house that they got in, and they know they're sacrificing because they're not necessarily buying that dream home, and to build up to ultimately get to that dream home as well. So it's not just about the investment piece, it's also just about that. And I just want to round off the tax piece. The tax man gets plenty.
Absolutely.
Well, the stamp duty, the governments get plenty in regards to how much stamp duty that would have been paid in terms of that flipping strategy as well.
Let's put the tax collector up there on his hat there, David.
That's it.
Yeah, I don't want to collect tax. I just pay my way.
Hey, you mentioned the influence that your parents had at that point in time. What were the money stories that you learned? Clearly you learned from experience that your dad was in the game, but what about the discussions you were having around money? What did it look like? Was there enough? Was there not enough? Was it neutral? What did it sort of look like back in the formative years for you?
It was always a very, it was neutral to lower income territory. So, and particularly so I've got two siblings and I'm in the middle. So I think a lot of families would go through that transition. So my mum would stay at home and Dad worked very, very hard. If it was one thing that he's instilled in me, it is to work very hard, strong work ethic. So, like I said, the story around money, there wasn't a lot of story around money. I subconsciously knew that my dad was doing something to accumulate wealth, or at least try to. So, but it wasn't until I met my wife, Lisa, and her parents, and they had a completely different story. So, they had invested in property and held, and that to me was a bit of a foreign concept. But it had clearly worked. They had bought in inner suburbs of Melbourne and then subsequently moved out a little bit in Melbourne. So they had two properties and they seemed to be doing very well. They had, have their principal place of residence. And so this is a bit of a mindset shift for me and understanding. They're very, very good with their money as well, very frugal with their money. Yeah. So
now you're obviously married. Couple of kids now, you would have saved for weddings and honeymoons and also the deposit for the family home. And we're obviously privileged. You've given us, as I said, this beautiful report here. So we know how much cash you've got in bank and a few other things. So we've got a really detailed story here. So what were some of your money behaviours and saving behaviours prior to buying your first investment property?
So my wife is incredibly thrifty with money. She is amazing.
She got it from her folks?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not a spender as such, but I wasn't typically a saver. So without having something like the Money Smarts in place, it was easy to see the creep come through. It's easy in retrospect to see, but certainly if there was something that I might want to go and buy it. So now it's a completely different story. So running the Money Smarts has been life-changing.
Was that providing any friction for your wife who's thrifty and you're spending? How did that sort of manifest in the household? What was it providing a problem, or was everything going okay?
It was fine. I wasn't outlandish with my spending. Lisa was certainly very good, and I dropped the ball massively. So we had been together, we were high school sweethearts. Okay. So since we were 18, year 12. So I had basically given control to Lisa with all of the finances, and she did pretty much everything. We knew we were in a reasonably good spot. We were able to afford a property when I was a third-year apprentice, so it would have been when I was about 20 years old. Brilliant. So we knew that there was steps that we had to take, and whether that was for social proof or whatever it was, we bought our house and we sat on that. And then I know you've recently been talking about buying new property. We had a story about how we bought land where near us. And
share. So we got some time.
We had bought some land near where we were living in Mooroolbark in the outer eastern suburbs of Melbourne. And we had moved in, so we sold up our house, our principal place of residence, and moved in with her folks. with the promise of the land being titled at a certain time and we could go and build a brand new property. And on face value, fantastic, great. But delays in the settlement, tensions within the family unit at Lisa's folks' house. You know, they've been absolutely amazing to have us in, but it was getting to the point where Lisa and I said, this is getting ridiculous. And we were fortunate enough, I just listened to your last podcast of some people that have just been shafted by the system. It's horrible.
Yep.
We were fortunate enough to actually sell our land and be able to make a profit on that land and come out and buy another principal place of residence. So
yeah, fortunate enough to make a profit, which is
yes.
good.
Now the podcast you're referring to was back in November, as the summer series. We are recording this a little bit earlier, so go back. I think it's 257.
So if things were going, so you obviously had that experience, and it was good that you didn't come out with your pants around your ankles. But what was the? You mentioned Money Smarts, but you mentioned Lisa was in control. She was thrifty. She had taken over for pretty much as long as you'd known each other. So why did Money Smarts come on the radar, and why was that adding value to what you were already doing?
So without trapping our surplus into our offset account, the basis of what the Money Smarts is, that we're getting that seepage come through. So actually introducing Lisa into this, the Money Smarts, was very difficult to get her on board. I mean, she had power and control over our money, and for all intents and purposes, she was doing a fantastic job. Trying to show her that there was a better way to manage our money and ensure that we can not leave any money on the table, as Ben would always say, was my goal in the end. So it took some months to get her to come around.
That. So how did she chip away?
So it's basically very carefully.
But what's interesting about your story, David, and Lisa's story is that you use an app, right? You use one of the biggest apps that tracks all the spending. So wasn't it interesting that by tracking it, you weren't necessarily focused on the end game, which was the surplus in the main account, right, in the primary account. So you in reading through the story that you've so kindly put together for us, which is, as I said, it's incredibly thorough. Couple of observations there. You tell that story about where Lisa wasn't on board early, but came on board. But you grab the data, you bring it out in a CSV file, and then you go and put it into Money Smarts. So you're doing so much more than the typical piece, because we say 10 minutes a month, right, is all you need. But you really are, one of the most elite money managers, and I can count them in small numbers, right, in sort of 3-digit numbers in terms of the money managers that I've seen across 25 years of doing this. You're in that elite category. So what moved the dial for her in terms of the decision to go to because it's pretty simple, right? Money Smarts is pretty simple, isn't it, right? You've got your jars, your virtual jars, and then you track the surplus and you check in each month. So what was it that finally got her over the line? Was it the convincing her that we would trap that money and we can put it to work?
I think not so much the process. I think she understood the process quite easily. It was her trust in me to manage that process.
Okay.
So, and the biggest thing, the ability for us to do all this has been us working together as a team. I think that's the hardest part. I remember seeing that as a hurdle when I wanted to implement this, is that I have to get Lisa on board. We are a team. We're essentially a business. Your family unit's a business, and I wanted it to run like that. So.
And she had separate savings accounts, buckets, which is quite common. We hear people talking about just organise all these multiple buckets.
There's a lot of shifting of money between accounts.
Yeah.
There was a lot.
You don't need to do all that.
No, that's
just
right.
have one simple offset account or high interest savings account, and away you go.
Can I press in a little bit on that? So, so Lisa's in control and doing a good job. You've introduced the Money Smarts. You've totally taken your time to do that. Why was it not just a case of, Lisa, is this a better system than what you're using? And if so, why don't you continue to run it? Was that part of the deal? You said, if we implement Money Smarts, then I've got to run it, or what? Take us to that bit.
So I could see Lisa, my wife, is an incredible person, as probably most wives are. Yeah. She does so much for our family, and I wanted to ensure that if I was going to implement this, I could prove to her that I could take that responsibility off her hands. She wouldn't have, not not taking control of her financially,
Yep.
but showing her that I could
Close the
manage
window.
this,
Yeah.
and say this is my portion of
Yep.
what we do in the household, and everything is open to have a look at, but you can then go and have more time for what you do with the kids and all the other stuff, because life is busy, life is insane.
Particularly with kids at your age.
It is crazy,
And,
as you
and
know.
you've gone further than that, right? Because not only are you using the portal and the Money Smart system, but you have got a property portfolio plan, but you've also developed your own simulation in terms of doing some forecasting for yourself. So it sounds to me as if post, late 2017, where you've stumbled across a podcast that was about property, which is also about money, which is also about mindset, which is also about these other things, that everything that you've done, you've been able to take those learnings and those lessons and put it into your own practice. Like, were you a spreadsheet nut before November 20?
You like to do the odd pivot chart here and there, but not really. It was just about starting and punching in the numbers, and
you're a
away you
Sparky.
go. Yeah, essentially, yes.
Yeah. Well, more than that, an engineer. So you do like some of the sort of moving parts. It's
I'm
not just
not an
about
official
connecting the
engineer.
power. Oh,
Some
sorry.
engineers will.
Righty, I don't want to upset the engineers.
No, that's right. Don't upset the engineers.
It seems like it's a bit of a passion for you. Was this an outlet for you to switch off from what you were doing at work and sort of dive really deep into the numbers and crunch them? Does that resonate for you?
I understand what you're saying, but not really. It was more, for me, the idea was that I understood I had a financial position within my family unit. I wanted to lay that out on paper to know exactly where I stood.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of families would understand exactly where their position is. If you ask somebody off the top of their head what their net position is, I'm sure that 99% of the population couldn't tell you.
That's
Correct.
why we're
I
on
mean,
a crusade to get people to plan, right, Ben?
Most budgets are about ins and outs, not about assets and liabilities and net worth position. Very few do the other page, which is the balance sheet.
Yeah.
They only do the P&L, right?
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. There's no doubt to me that, and you articulate really nicely in the report you've given us around all my. There was a aha moment, but there was an all my moment there. If we want to get to where we want to get to, rule of 25 is in here in terms of how that plays out. So you needed to get busy, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a lot of late nights and a lot of Lisa going, "What the hell are you doing?"
But I'm sure she would have been excited if she's thrifty and sort of sees it, and obviously seen the success of her parents. I'd be like, "Honey, you want a coffee? Keep going." If this is something about giving us a plan in terms of what our future looks like.
That would be right, really playing into that. That would have gave her a sense of peace, right? Because if she's thrifty, you're probably neutral in that regard, and then all of a sudden you're taking ownership in this. That would have given her enormous peace, right?
I certainly hope so. Yeah.
So now you've discovered this podcast. It's called The Property Couch. What are you learning? When did all of these numbers hit the pages and the paper, and take us through the learning journey that you've been on, and then we'll talk about what sort of happened with the portfolio and where you want to take this.
Yeah. So it all started with the app where I accumulate all the data and categorise everything.
Yep.
So it was mid-2017 I started using it.
Yep.
And just coincidentally came across your podcast and decided that I needed to get some decent data before I started actually understanding where a position was.
Yep.
So I was methodical in how I categorised everything through the app. So I was on it every night. I would be going through every transaction, and this is where Lisa was a little bit unsure about what I was doing, so interrogating her about her spending every single night.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. So as I went through, and in 1 year, I was able to see exactly where our position was.
Yeah.
Then I could place all that. It's so simple to do. You just download it into a CSV and then push that into your spreadsheets and your pivot charts and see exactly where you are. And then I could then continue to do that on an ongoing basis. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. It's certainly helping in terms of, because you bought the first investment property in Roxburgh Park before that, right? That's what you were saying to us earlier, right? I bought the property, now I probably need to know what's next, what happens, and I need to learn a little bit more about property.
So it's actually, I set up the app and was categorising things before I had bought the property,
Yeah.
but it was for me, it was a little bit too hard. And it was, this is categorising stuff, I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
So it was sitting in the background. It was still connected through the magic of APIs, collecting all the data. And after I'd listened, the property had settled, I opened the app up and a lot of it had been categorised for me.
Yeah.
All I had to do was go back 6 months and go, okay, these ones here.
These ones are the
add another
outstanding
6
ones.
months onto time,
Yeah.
and then grab all that data.
Yeah.
There's my annual data for my whole household budget.
And you know
Away you
you're
go.
doing it.
And then, of course, came the report after. I feel like the numbers were good enough
Yeah.
for me to understand, but I knew that I wanted to build a portfolio, and I knew that I had to have a team moving forward, and people would want to know, those members of our team would want to know exactly where we're at.
Yeah.
So if I could give them something
This is a fact find on steroids. You know, that's what it is. It's a financial fact find, but it's giving insights in terms of goals and observations, and so it's a terrific. I mean, from an advisor's point of view, if a client walked in, and I was saying to you before we recorded, three people over basically 20 years of doing what I've been doing presented me with something like this. And I'm like, that's cool. You know, I get the odd spreadsheet where it's all summarised, but this is like, as good as this is level one sort of stuff in terms of what it looks like.
For the benefit of the listeners, David, I certainly want to preface this by saying I don't want it to be a fluff our pillows, but what is it about the property couch that actually helped you with your transformation? What was it that you got out of it, and what was it maybe something that some of the insights that you got that maybe. Because I'd like to think that every one of our listeners has listened to every episode, right? But it's just not true. So for someone who's listening to this and they've only listened to a handful of episodes, what would you say the difference before listening to the Property Couch and afterwards in terms of being able to implement, as Ben says, it's only empowering if you act on it. You did act on it. What was the catalyst to help you do that?
So the podcast itself is really, for me, was about lifting the veil. I think a lot of people think they understand money. And after I'd listened to, particularly as you talk about, the first 20 episodes, so I remember the first episode I listened to was with Bradley Beer about depreciation and getting a schedule.
Do you know a fun fact about that one?
Go.
Ben was lying on the floor with a pillow on his back. We had just moved into this building, and Brad was in the office because we were over where I'm sitting, and we just moved in, and your back was stuffed.
Oh, God.
So, sorry, fun fact.
Yeah.
Keep moving.
So I remember listening to that and going, my innate understanding of property is very low. I do not understand what I'm doing. So let's go back to the start.
Yep.
And fortunately, I reckon around that time you actually said in one of those episodes, go back. And I started from the start.
I don't say it as much anymore. I've got to keep remembering that it's important,
So
right?
it's pre-recorded at the end of every
Yeah, it is.
Oh, that's right, because it's pre-recorded. No, but I mean, like, just remind them to... I do say that. Thank you, Linus.
every episode.
Oh, well, I'll have a little chance of cutting that bit out. Particularly when I was laughing.
Very good.
So I went back and I listened to that, and there was a framework, a structure, and it wasn't just about property. It was about how to use your money and with property. The offset account was just mind-blowing for me, and I think a lot of people would understand what it does, but truly understanding the power of what it can do when you have non-realised income compared to a realised income, and your last episode touched on that a little bit as well. It was truly transformational for me.
Terrific.
So therefore you were able to see these frameworks, and it gave you the confidence to obviously invest in more property. You've gone about the planning process. Why did you take the step to actually, your report gives us some insights into your personality, but why did you go and get a plan?
So actually my wife said the same thing. She said, this is fantastic. We don't need to go spend all this money. That could be part of our deposit. But I truly understood that if I wanted to get this done, I need to stand on the shoulders of giants. You guys have been doing this for so long. And part of that is also the team that you have surrounding you. And that truly came to light after we were implementing our second property, because our first one was cross-securitized and we had to uncross.
And tisk.
Did
Did you go direct to a bank or a broker on that one?
The first one was a broker.
Okay.
And they crossed you?
They crossed it because every mum and dad investor does that. They cross, apparently.
Is that what this broker told you?
Yeah, he's a fantastic guy.
It's an important point to reinforce what we've been saying all along, but it's nice that there are brokers and there are investment savvy mortgage brokers, and they are not the same.
Absolutely, yeah.
So again, terrific person, but we're not judging the person, but we're judging the advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So having the team of mortgage brokers and at Empower, I know you don't like talking about Empower Wealth too much, but
don't.
No.
Well, it's just the lessons that we want to teach for the
absolutely.
For the
it doesn't
listeners,
have to be an Empower Wealth. It could be anybody.
Correct.
As long as you know that they understand what they're doing. But having that team around me was really part of what I wanted to have, and that I could leverage off. And like I said, the last property we bought came to light. So using your property
Investment
Nicole?
advisor. Oh, Nicole, the buyer's agent.
Yeah, buyer's agent. Sorry, mental blank.
That's right.
Yeah, she's
a jet.
amazing at what she does.
Yep.
And then of course Matt from your brokerage team, which was amazing to uncross everything. Was just a mess.
It really was.
Yeah. The pre-record chat about not talking about Empower Wealth is going well, but no, thank you.
I can see Iris in the background there, she's having a good laugh.
Well, I guess, again, we haven't used this platform to fluff our company's pillows, but we're notwithstanding, we're very, very proud of the team.
And you should absolutely be.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, can you tell us what's the point of doing all this? What's the end game? What are you, Lisa, and the kids aiming for? What's the destination?
That was probably another aha moment that is in there. It's more interactive if you have it on on.
I know you can click on it.
Click on it.
Yep.
So the biggest part for me was, why do we want to do this? What do we want to do? And it's essentially about retirement at the end of the day.
Yep.
Do we want to retire?
Early retirement. Yep.
When do we want to retire? What do we want to do when we want to retire? And actually filmed both of our responses just on the iPhone. And once you have that realization that you've got a camera in your face and you need to be honest about what your expectations are when you retire, I think that really was, for Lisa and I, a little bit of an aha moment. Well, actually, I don't think we want to retire. We want to have enough money to do what we want. Freedom, all these things came up.
Yep.
That Lisa and I went, well, hang on, it's not about really retirement. It's about us having freedom at the end of the day to do what we want.
We talked very early on in the piece, I reckon it's in the first 50 episodes of the podcast, about having something in writing. If you put something in writing, you put it on the fridge that you get to see it, or in your case now, fast forward to the video age, you've documented that in video. You've made a pledge to yourselves and a pledge to each other. That is powerful from a mindset point of view.
Absolutely.
And it's powerful from an action point of view. So I think, this is the sort of stuff, because it's honest, it's for you, it's not for anyone else to see. Although, as you say, your team of advisors get to know what you're about. So, part of a good fact-finding session is not about the money. It's about what the money does for you. And if it's about, happiness, if it's about experiences, if it's about joy, if it's about choice, if it's about freedoms, whatever it is, that's what money gets you to go after, right? That's what having an aspirational mindset is about. It's about basically saying, I want to be able to be in a position where I get to have some choice. If I choose to work, it's a freedom thing. If I get to volunteer, you talk about, sort of volunteering some of your time and doing things and giving back and paying forward. And I think that's an amazing set of core values that you can hold to basically, improve society.
Mate, you've got a gorgeous family. You're obviously on track to do some really awesome things for your family. What can you document any, or sort of share with us any changes in mindset that you had because there's been quite a transformation for you, in terms of handing over responsibility to taking joint responsibility to then being able to trap surplus and then put it into a property, and then now knowing exactly where you're heading. What sort of mental transformation have you had throughout that process?
It's been huge for me. So a part of this experience has been self-improvement for me and ensuring that my mindset is correct all the time. So I now do Success Leaves Clues. So a lot of the successful people read a lot, so I do a lot of reading. a lot of mental stimulation to ensure that I'm always on the ball, and I'm always checking this monthly. So I go into the spreadsheet, I'll update it, I'll ensure that we're still on track. So the transformation for myself has been amazing. I feel like I feel like a different person than I was when I began.
And you wanted to go after it. And one of the things we talk about with, Roger Federer, as he wanted to be the best tennis player in the world, and he knew that he needed to make that investment, and he made that investment in the many coaches and people that have, trained his mind, trained his body, trained his technique, and that type of thing. So you came into late 2017 with no real idea, and you've now gone about trying to be the best. So coming back to why Lisa asked you the question, why would you're doing pretty well, like you've got but you came in and iron sharpens iron, right? So you've gone in to get critiqued on that. You're open-minded to, but you come out away from that, and obviously our spreadsheets are nuts.
Yeah.
But you've been able to, put some of that into your own spreadsheets, right? And you've learnt from that in terms of the moving parts, and now you can be more informed. And from our point of view, there is nothing better than seeing people who move the dial on their education and who take those lessons and pass them on to knowledge. So you get the information, you learn that, and now it's a practice skill. And you're going to teach other people to do it. I'm sure you're going to teach your kids to do it. So that is just, all credit to you, my friend, in terms of how you've gone about doing it.
Hey David, it's now just a normal part of your life, right? Like money smarts is in you, trapping surplus is in you. What about for the listeners who are a bit wobbly at the moment? What would be your advice to them around, but it doesn't quite work for me, or I've got my own system, I've got a bit of a hybrid. Being someone who's got that piece of and clarity of mind of where you're heading, what sort of message would you share with them?
I'd probably take 5 on your life a little bit. Step back and say, if you're a little bit shaky on the money smarts, well, if you think your system's better, why is it better? Writing something down, in my experience, is incredibly powerful. So use that method. Maybe I would suggest probably going back to the start of the podcast and listen to exactly why money smarts might be the right option for you. And look, it may not work for everybody. I touched on one of your other podcasts about Scott Papes, the Barefoot Investor, and a lot of people speak to me about that. I understand that it is a great way to recover debt, but yours is sort of a little bit more of if you've got a property, if you've got an offset account, this is probably the best way, in my opinion, to go ahead, I would suggest.
Yeah, Scott Pape's doing a lot right. It's just a couple of little tweaks that we think that could be added. I mean, he's an unbelievable marketing machine. He started the conversation. He's immensely successful as an author, right? So he's props to him.
Absolutely.
We just think that there's a couple of things that you tweak that we think make a massive difference. And one of the things he talks about in his book is about the debt snowball. One of the things that Ben and I have a chat about is the debt snowball actually works for people who where you pay the smallest first and then go up to the largest so that you can feel like you're making progress. Mathematically, that just doesn't make sense, right? But for people who are in duress and stress and who aren't living in a vacuum, sometimes you've got a game against yourself that you've got to play. But other than that, most of what he's saying is bang on. But
absolutely.
But we think that the omission of the offset account is a big one, and hence we've obviously tackled that in our system.
Well, I mean, our system has been around since 2008, 2009. A lot of people on our socials do go, you're copying the Barefoot Investor, or you actually do your research. Our system's been around a lot longer than that. But if you're using that and it's working for you, all kudos to you. Keep using it. You're moving the dial on how you're looking after the money.
Because there's so many people who aren't looking after their money. Well, let's go
back to episode 1.
Yeah.
People being done with money, right?
Yeah.
This to me. So if that's working for you, go for it.
Yep.
But if you want a more simplified system, and that's more focused on aspirational wealth building, then an offset account has to be a part of that story.
Absolutely,
and
definitely.
We talked about that, back in again episode 2058, where we
2058.
Sorry, episode 258, wasn't it?
2058.
You'll get there one day, guys.
258. I'm good with my numbers. I should be in a numbers business. that we talked about that, right, in terms of how it can be so powerful for you. It's an Australian invention, so get behind it. It's very, very good in terms of how it organises your life and organises your finances.
Absolutely. So a couple of things. Was there any little money hacks that, because everything's about trapping and getting it into your offset account. So for us, it's, pay yourself on a Thursday, get the 7 day. Is there little nuances that you've found throughout the experience that you think, that's a little tweak that I get to actually park more money into my offset account?
Well, actually, got a question for both of you.
Oh, here we go.
So the
on
7
the spot.
The 7 day float works really well until you have an inflated amount of costs during your week. And some of these costs can not be huge, but can eat into that 7 day float. So,
for example,
so it might be. I'm not going to be careful.
Go there.
Discretionary and undiscretionary. Yeah, so it would be a discretionary cost, but non-discretionary at the same time. So you might be thinking that we need
groceries,
to spend. No, not groceries.
And it's ice cream in the grocery shop, or
absolutely not.
No. So give me an example.
Or you fight Ben.
You
fight Ben up. He loves it.
It's a rules-based system. So it works because, one particular individual has been using it for almost 45 years.
And he goes, I put my kids through private school when it was mathematically not possible for me to do it, and I still did it.
Yeah.
That's
obviously Michael Pope, one of our partners in the business, right? So he's tracked every dollar he's ever spent since the age of 19. So in terms of its origins, it's grassroots. We know the system worked. We tweaked it a little bit for the digital age. And his spreadsheets were a little bit more complicated than they needed to be, but so that's why I'm curious in terms of, because if it's a conscious spend and it's a regular spend and you're going to be spending it every week, that's your 7 day float. If it's something out of the ordinary in terms of the haircut, which might be every 3 weeks or 4 weeks, then I'm not. Some people
I do that as a provision.
Yeah, some people do that as a and they paid for that on their credit card as well, because you can choose which way you want to run your jars, right? So coming back to that particular example about a haircut, I would keep that money in the primary account, right? Because obviously provision account is what you're going to future spend or ad hoc spend. But I would say to those people, if you go to the hairdresser, that's technically a bill, right?
Correct.
Because it's every 3 weeks. So tap it on your credit card because you said it was going to be a bill. It's going to be there. It shouldn't be in that discretionary element of that. But when we first started using the system back in 2008 and trialling it, we actually Michael had some of his holiday money inside. So I started using holiday money, and well, that didn't last very long. So he had a float inside his 7 day float. So his was originally it was the living and lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
So he didn't mind that the living and lifestyle actually built up some money. And then over time,
because he's not susceptible to waste.
No, he's very susceptible to it. He's very diligent in terms of how he manages his money. So for me, but it's like, no, Jane and I will spend it. So if it's in that, we would actually think that it's part of what our regular spending would be. So we quickly pivoted and pulled that out, and then started to focus on the stuff that was 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, as opposed to he had them in monthly blocks. And because of the digital age, that's how you used to have to run your money, remember? This is a system that's been running in his household for 40 years. So you couldn't even transfer money back in those. You had to go to the bank and get your money out. So, from that point of view, that's an example of it. So if it's not working for you and you have those one-offs, or, you're in a shout with the guys at the bar. This is a great
example.
Yeah, okay, good. All right. So, and it's your shout, right? And you can't leave the shout. I mean, that's un-Australian.
Absolutely.
Right? So you know you're going to overspend. So, and you hopefully the beer drinking's been done on the weekend, you've paid for the groceries, and so you've still got a bit there, right? So you're technically going to be overspending of what would be a normal weekend. So you can recover that over that period. So if you did do an irregular spend in a regular environment, then you can, let's say it was $100 over. I would say the best thing to do is for the next 4 weeks, in terms of that auto payment, just put $25 out. Pull $25 out, and then over the next 4 weeks, you can recover that position. So challenge yourself on being a little bit more stringent on whether it be the coffee, whether it be the takeaway lunches or whatever it is, to try and recover that. If you don't, you've just made a conscious choice that it's off the bottom line. That $100 is now not going to be trapped for the course of the 12 months, which is the annual program.
And allocate it to your holiday provision, because that's where the pain, because
Yeah.
you're doing all this hard work, you're working all year, and ultimately you want to reward yourself with a holiday. But if the $100 that Ben just talked about, that you actually then take that off your provision, so you got $5,000 for a holiday, and all of a sudden, because of that shout, it's now $4,900. So, gives you a little bit of pain.
Yeah.
So when the next time the same opportunity presents, you actually know what it means, right?
Yeah.
So as Ben says, then if you are going to be in the shout, then you peg it back over the next 4 weeks versus taking it out of somewhere where it really, really stings.
So when you've had that experience, David, what have you done? How have you recovered, or you've just let it slide?
No, yes. So there has been a couple of instances where
Life gets in the way. Yeah.
the credit card might be used over
Yep.
the debit card. So my wife, being as thrifty as she is right on top of it. So I think we may have run our 7-day float a little bit low for too long, and didn't allow for those large purchases.
Yep.
You might go out to
We
dinner.
did the same.
It might be,
Yep, we did the same.
And we were doing. You might be doing really well for 4-5 weeks, and then something comes up, and you're running to a very tight ship. So we only recently just extended out for just $50.
Perfect.
My fear is that money is just going to get absorbed.
It's gone.
Yeah.
We'll make it a provision. Make it a provision for the night out that's unplanned, right? And you're going to do 6 of them in the year, or whatever number you come up with.
Yeah, because the challenge is if it's auto in there, it will definitely go.
And that's the problem.
Yeah,
isn't it?
That's so. Bryce is absolutely right. Now, when you've got your phone and you can wire the money across to the account instantaneously, because you usually have your debit card account, your living lifestyle account, with your same bank, right, as your primary. So if that was the case, because Jane had some experiences where she was at the grocery checkout, declined. Ooh, just a minute. I just need to wire some money across. There it is. And then she'd ring me, what have you done? You just embarrassed me at the supermarket. Right, because you're both on the same card or whatever. Sorry about that, honey. Yep, sorry about that. But that's normally how you'll try and do it, because if you do put it in there, you'll find ways to spend it.
Absolutely, yeah,
so,
definitely.
So, and at $50 and all, with all responsibility, you don't need to be that tight, right? I mean, in my household, I'm a bit fortunate. I've got many properties and, income's pretty good. So from that point of view, we have tweaked it, right? So we've got a little bit more grace in regards to our 7-day float. We don't have to be as stringent on our money management as what I was and what Jane and I were when we had the 2 kids and we were early days and we were starting the business, as an example. So yeah, you will get a little bit more relaxed as your income grows, but it's a conscious choice, all right? And that's what I'm sort of saying. It's a rules-based system, but you can tweak the rules if you feel like that. But
you set the rules.
You set the rules, but in terms of the framework, in terms of how
don't change them on the run though.
They're non-negotiable. You don't put anything other than bills on your credit card, because that changes wrong behaviour.
Yes.
What happens is people then think I can put everything on it. Right, and so if you're in that stage of trying to build wealth, if you're on the other side of it and you're in the retirement phase, hey, whack away on that credit card, baby. If you've earned the right to do that. But if you're in the accumulation phase, then you've got to stay true to the delayed gratification, because the other side of it's pretty exciting.
Yep.
For rounding it out for me, because this is obviously a really good news story. What are the mistakes you made, and if you had your time again, you would do that differently?
Well, the big one for me was the cross-collateralisation. That would definitely come to the foremost in my mind. I suppose I would say understand education would be the first and foremost thing, but you don't know what you don't know. So a lot of people are doing this because their neighbour's doing it or their parents are doing it. So if you're listening to this podcast and it's the first one, I would say the very first thing you need to do is go back to the start.
Yeah.
And then...
We were ordinary back then. We're ordinary today. But you hopefully the
we just
frameworks
hang a bit of rubbish on each other a bit more now, which makes us a bit more relaxed. Back then, we were a bit stern, a bit stiff.
Yeah. But then go back and do this so much, and well, it might be half the problem these days is analysis paralysis. But there is so much good content out there that you can learn from. So
agreed.
Ensure that you have all your ducks in a row. Step back and say, where am I with my financial position? if you can't answer that, maybe you need to go see a professional or do a spreadsheet.
Yeah, do a spreadsheet. So you go.
I was to say, for the benefit of the listeners, are you comfortable sharing how many properties you need to fulfil your plan? How many
Absolutely.
investment properties?
Yeah.
4.
So
And
not
we've got
10,
2 of them.
not 20, just 4.
So first one, Roxburgh Park. Second one we've got here in
South Australia.
Pennington, South Australia. That's a nice looking property, that one.
Yeah, it's a nice one. Cole did a great job.
The first one, how if you had your time over again, would you grab that one?
No way.
Why not?
Yep. Body corp. Oh god, I had so many problems with that property. Oh my god. Hot water bursting, bad tenants. So the changeover of tenants. They didn't pay their last month's rent.
How many of that style of townhouses in the comp?
24.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of scarcity there.
Okay.
So I've had some recent success with it. We had a good evaluation come back when we got the other one. So it's not a complete loss. And Lisa would say, what I would say though about it was that it needed to happen for me and Lisa to grow.
Bryce's best property was his first, where he talks about that one.
Absolutely, I made the biggest mistakes you could possibly make. In fact, I've made a lot of mistakes, to be honest, but still, I don't regret them.
No.
I'd like to maybe change them, but
Exactly.
I've made a couple.
So what we're saying is you're going to the plan says you're going to have over $2,000 a week with 4 properties.
It's more. It's 120,000 a year, so it's a little.
Well, I wasn't going to.
Oh, okay.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Sorry.
Well, I didn't ask permission for that, man. So I was just saying. I was saying suitably vague.
Sorry, Dave. Okay, there we go.
So 4 properties, thank you, Ben. $120,000 a year. Life's good now. You don't go without. You're still planning. You're living for today as well as planning for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty good story, Ben.
When's the next one? Because we've got a nice buffer in the offset, so I see that in here as well. How close are we to number 3?
I think it was 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
Far away. That's going to come around pretty quick.
And it does, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so keep an eye on that. Now, your chance for final words, final observations. What would when you were
Mate, it's going to come back at us.
When you decided to come along and share your learnings and your story to us.
Use the words that's most overused in Australian television. Your journey.
Your journey. Yes. What were some of the things you were thinking when you were driving up here in the car that you would love to be able to share? Is there any sort of anecdotes, stories, observations?
I think I've touched on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, you have.
But I just wanted to thank both of you boys for putting the podcast out. I don't know if you fully appreciate what you've done for a lot of people. I hope you do. And of course I wanted to meet Ivis. That was the biggest thing.
Yeah, let's be honest. I mean, we're the side show.
Most people walk in the studio and go, "Oh, I've been so excited to meet Ivis." And rightly so. She's a jet. But
she's a jet.
Did you know that you were setting yourself up for a little bit of self-congratulation then?
No.
This is a leading question.
Yeah,
no, it wasn't. What about a tip? Let's move on from that. Just give me a tip. Give that.
So can I answer that? So we are starting to become aware more than ever of the impact that the frameworks, the principles, the philosophies, the consistency of the message, the lack of advertising that we're having. So thank you for the feedback, but it's something that we're excited about, that people can take this stuff. Ben says it every single week. Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it. We're really proud of the fact that the knowledge that we give, we feel is empowering, but we're able to see it in real life that people are acting on it, and that's it's fueling us. It's making us feel really good about the mission that we're on here, and
because we don't have regulation, it means we stop someone from getting stung. Right, so that's a big part of that story.
And we've noticed that people like yourself who come on here and tell your story, because you've been brave, you've been transparent, you've been willing to share your story. People try on your story and they learn so much. The amount of time people write and said, someone just wrote recently, I heard the first one and it was Courtney, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I got so much out of it, right? So the people that are actually acting on it make an enormous difference. So I'm going to throw that back at you. The fact that you were able to come on here.
Yes.
And,
thank you.
And be transparent. That
and
will
my
change.
hat.
Like the hat's
and your glasses.
We'll get that up on socials.
That'll be a thing of... They'll live with us for the next 500
I was
episodes.
actually trying to get Ivis in a photo
Oh.
Hence the reason that she's got a present.
Well, the question is, will she do it?
Will she do it in the summer series?
No,
You can't
she's
even look at me with these
standing
eyes,
down.
can you?
Standing
Very
down.
good. Well, mate, it's been
Yes.
a pleasure. Thanks for
Thanks,
coming
mate.
on
Thank
to
you
our
so
summer
much for having
series.
me.
Appreciate it.
For those people sitting at home that are enjoying this over the summer, there's a lot of lessons,
A lot
that
of
we can learn
gold.
from there. So, thanks again,
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, mate. Well
Thank
done.
you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
mate. How good was your gift?
Oh, me top hat. It's a
Hey?
ripper.
So, folks, you have to go to socials because you've got to see the hat that old mate was wearing and the and the little gift that I got too. It was rather special. I think the Stig might even put hers in.
Yeah, sure. Well, there'll be some photo. She won't show her face, but she'll maybe put the headphones over her, or the noise blocker, the noise cancelling headphones.
Actually, I
She
want
got-
to put it out to the people. Let's crowdsource. When Iris puts a photo up her, she always covers her face.
Yeah.
If you don't want that to happen in the future, just shout out on socials. Stig, stop covering your face. You're not a dentist. You can be seen on TV. So make sure that we see your face. So let
I'm
us know
sure
on
there'll be
socials.
a time there where we can, make sure we're doing some type of charity or thing that will ask Stig to put her face out there and, earn a little bit more for any type of good cause. Is that right, Stiggy? Yeah, she's happy.
Oh,
There we
okay.
go. She's happy. Her face is only for sale for a good cause.
Which is a good thing, right? So, David, thank you for coming on. Who's in the studio? Let's just say all of the philosophies, the frameworks, everything that we've talked about over almost 5 years on the podcast, Ben, David was a devotee to.
My big takeaway: plan to become what you plan to become.
Plan to
And
become.
David has taken that on board, documented it. He's basically got himself a vision board. He's got a vision plan. But
Yeah.
he's got his list of all of his advisors. So he's got his key
inspiring.
people. It's just a wonderful story, and he was a delight, absolute delight to get to interview. So he's on his journey,
He's on his journey.
and exciting
Well-rounded,
times for him,
well-balanced.
Lisa, and the kids. So
His family's
all good story for that. Yeah.
His family is still the forefront of his mind, even though he's got a financial plan. So, David, thanks for coming on and sharing with our community. Hopefully, you got some benefit out of that, folks. You can try a little bit of his story on for size, and hopefully for some of you, try all of it on because he's on the pathway to success. But Ben, I'm enjoying the summer series. I'm going to stick around. Hopefully, you are too. But until next week on the summer series,
Bryce, knowledge is empowering, and just like all of our people on the summer series, they're acting on it.
only if you act on it. Only if you act on it, folks. So, more to come. We'll see you next week, folks. Hey there, folks. Bryce Holdaway here. Before you go, if you're new to our community and only listened to maybe a handful of episodes, I thoroughly recommend that you go all the way back to episode number 1, where we unpack all of the foundations when it comes to property investing. Now, for those of you that might be a little bit time poor, I've got good news for you. We have a binge guide that you can download straight away, which summarises the first 20 episodes where Ben and I unpack the foundational pillars of the A, B, C, D, and so much more. And you can get that straight away. If you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20, you can download it and consume it whenever you want. It's completely free and available now. And for those of you, just a quick reminder that nothing we've spoken about today constitutes financial advice. We recommend that you reach out to your licensed professional advisor so that you can look at your unique circumstances before acting on any information. Now don't forget, go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20 and get your binge guide today.